Hello and welcome to Transforming Tomorrow from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jan Babington. Conversations about AI are everywhere. But how often do they lead to discussions about data centres and bat caves? Or Meta's official company ninjas? If that's what you're looking for in a podcast, you're in for a treat with today's episode.
Jan, where do you stand on your energy consumption when it comes to AI usage?
Well, I have learnt that I can do a Google search and then put minus AI at the end of it, and I don't get the nonsense that can sometimes produced out of that. So I hope in doing that I maybe am not inducing an AI search process on top of my existing Google searches. Because I know I'm a bit of a Luddite, and I'm sure that I'm uninformed, although I hope in the next hour I'll become more informed. But I just don't want to use AI. I want to use the things I've got in my own innate intelligence.
You could just go to a library. That would have a far less of an impact. You know, every time you're planning on Googling, just go outside, get on your bike, ride down to the library, look it up in Encyclopedia Britannica.
I think there's an optimal point somewhere, and I know this means that I'm like 1,000 years old, but I think for me, I've passed my optimal point of how much I want to engage with new stuff. Blah, humbug.
But like I said, then why are you not getting on your bike? There's even less of an impact, carbon-wise, anything-wise, if you just get on your bike and go to the library.
Well, that's harder to tell. We might find the answer to that.
Could it be
as well.
because there is actually some kind of level of convenience and usefulness and practicability to using programs that, AI or not, do have some kind of footprint?
For sure. But the footprint as I see it, and the footprint when it happens somewhere in the world where we don't see it, that's the thing that I feel uncertain about, and where it'd be nice to know more about what happens after you've pressed the return button on your.
Have you avoided all of these trends then? You didn't make an AI avatar of yourself in a toy box?
I most certainly did not. I don't even know what that is, and I have no intention of finding out.
You are so lucky that you have never come across that. It was one of the most irritating trends. What I found most irritating about that trend is people created these supposed like toy figures of themselves using AI. If you imagine you're buying an action figure and it represents yourself and what your job is, and it's meant to look like you with certain little accessories. So if you were to be a bin man, you'd have a bin with it. If you were to be Superman, you'd come with a Superman cape. If you were to be a mermaid, it would come with a few shells and a crab. But people created them and they didn't seem to understand that action figures tend to come with lower limbs. So many of these action figures that were created cut off above the knee. So they weren't full action figures. The AI-generated images, which I think this is all down to AI, cut off above the knee. So there were people out there who just had lost all their legs. This is showing the massive limitations of what AI can do, because you could draw a better action figure of yourself because you know it would have feet.
And here's the thing, and maybe this is also where we go, is that the use of technology for various purposes is undoubtedly amazing and fantastic, and the ability to scan a lot of X-rays, say at speed and accurately to predict disease or whatever, really, really great. I think the thing that sometimes annoys me is that some of the things that we're using a lot of energy for and having to build lots of data centers for are actually maybe not that useful.
Oh, no, they're totally and utterly frivolous. I dare say that 90% of use of AI is people doing something because they think it would look fun, or they can't be bothered doing it properly themselves.
Well, I don't know how this podcast is going to go, good listeners.
I just don't think you need me at all. I could sit and listen to you two debate this all day.
Yes, but I suspect
we do have a guest.
Yeah.
We do. He's not meant to be speaking yet, but he's here. We'll get to you. We'll get to you. Yeah.
No, I'm not needed. I'm quite convinced.
No, I come across it so often, though, that people talk about the benefits of using AI for this, that, and the other, and I have so many objections to AI. If I use it, it's because I've got no other choice for what I'm using it for.
Shall we put the AI question aside a wee bit?
No, because I want to rant. But if you're telling me this isn't just going to be a 45-minute podcast of me ranting, then yes, let's put AI to the side.
But because it is related to, but not solely related to, data
Yes.
centres. So tell me, who might we have as a guest, Paul? Pull
Yeah.
yourself together.
Yeah, I'm ranting about AI because of the amount of data it uses and the data centers that produce said AI results and the potential sustainability impacts of said centers. And we're going to welcome back today Professor Adrian Friday, who's a Professor of Computing and Sustainability. And you remember, Jan, he got to make up the job title himself, which the more I think about it, the more I wonder if he actually is employed here at Lancaster University. But it seems he's still here, so no one's got rid of him yet. We know he's not a big fan of the Sustainable Development Goals, but we'll welcome him back anyway to talk to us about data centres and everything we can think of around that topic. Hello, Adrian.
Hello, how lovely to be back. I still don't think you need me. If you want someone who's not going to rant, you might have picked the wrong person.
Adrian is unique among every single guest we have ever had on this podcast, Jan. Do you know why? And if you do know why, I'll be very worried.
No, I don't know why.
He's the only one whose picture is currently attached magnetically to my fridge.
I would never have guessed that. And now I'm even more disturbed. Why have you got me back here under false pretenses?
During the summer, myself and Adrian bumped into each other at a wedding.
Oh, that's true.
Yes,
That's absolutely true.
We did.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
at said wedding was a photo
reminder.
booth, not using AI, but using silly hats. And so there is a
Yeah.
picture of myself, Adrian, and my good partner, Sabine, wearing silly hats and sunglasses and stuff from said wedding. And that's attached to my fridge at home.
I have seen that picture, Adrian. You'll be pleased to know.
I think you should use it as the little profile picture for this, to be quite honest.
Excellent.
Right.
He's wearing a hat that I'm really disappointed he didn't turn up in today.
So I'm pleased you started off with a small rant, I have to say, because AI exists at different scales, and AI has a relationship to data centers, and it can exist in the very small, and you can have it embedded in devices, and it exists in the very large. And actually, your instinct is correct. If you use it to generate big things like images or series of images that become movies, this is much, much more computationally expensive than using it to generate text, which is much more computationally expensive than not using it at all, generally speaking.
I think we're going to get a sense of proportion. This is very good. So to
Doesn't
get
sound
us
good to me.
No, just to stop the generating the Lego figures, right? But also, we have to be asking the question: what are we using it for, and is that energy that's proportional with that energy well spent for society? Because there are other challenges we're facing.
If you want to see what you look like with a totally different body, like an action figure, just go to Blackpool Pier, stick your head through one of the holes that's on the promenade, and you can even see what you would look like as a king, mermaid, anything.
I love the fact that you're probably the youngest person around this table who's the most grumpy about this technology. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, he's an old man at heart,
He
I think
is,
we would
isn't he?
say.
Bless him.
So let's start with data centres then, which, as you said, are linked to AI, which is kind of where we got excited about in the outset. But what is a data centre and what happens in them?
Excellent. So a data center, again, these exist at different scales, but essentially it's a room full of computers. You tend to want to keep the computers running at a temperature that makes sense for them so they don't melt down. So you have some cooling. There's various ways of doing that. You don't want them to run out of power. So you tend to have some sort of power backup system in there, and you have to link them together and link them to the rest of the world. So you need some networking and you need some connections. The data center itself, as they get bigger, so you've got kind of more heat to get rid of. So you need to think about a more industrial sort of cooling. So then you need sort of heat exchangers with the air or with water. And you need to think about its relationship to where it gets the power and how you do the cooling. But yeah, think of a massive, often quite dark room, quite hot, full of racks and racks of computers jammed in together, lots of noise of fans and things like that.
Is it just like an old desktop PC to the nth degree that had its cooling fan built in to keep it cool, only that has been not just large, but gargantuan?
Yeah, so they're optimized for the density. So you get a cabinet, and you have these special sort of builds of PCs, if you like, that you layer them into the cabinet, and then in that are lots of boards with computers, and you want to get as many in as you can, because obviously the more dense that is, the more compute you can get into that facility.
So in some of these computer arrays in, they'll be doing like running the banking system behind the scene.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
they can run, generally they're running software of any kind. And there's been a massive shift in how we provide services. And this sort of, back in the day, there were a few big mainframes where computation gets done, and then there was a sort of revolution where the computation went on your desktop, and then people realised that you could start providing these sort of compute services for people and sell that as a service. And then actually, if you put all the compute in one place and cool it all as one, you can get that ratio about how much infrastructure you have to run to keep it running optimally in one place. So there's a sort of nice argument about centralizing this stuff again. So it's all sort of shifted back into the cloud. The cloud is just the data centers and the virtualization of all these sort of bits of software.
So the cloud exists somewhere on the ground.
The cloud has physicality. The cloud is a physical thing. It's buildings and wires and optic fibers.
But from my perspective, it's not a building next to me. I sort of it goes there by some way.
It could be kind of anywhere in the world. So we have data centers on campus here at the university. And some of the services we interact with are there, but our email goes off to some data centers run by Microsoft. And actually there are many of those replicated across the world, and we're probably dealing with the ones in Warrington or Dublin or sort of close enough, because physical distance makes a difference, because that's how long it takes to communicate with it and get an answer back. So generally you want to interact with things that are closer in network terms to get that sort of interactive performance. So you tend to put, let's say you're watching YouTube videos, you want to get your data from as close as possible to kind of get the data quickly.
So how big are these data centers then?
What a question. Bigger and bigger, and also, they exist at a range of scales. There are private ones, there are public ones. The very biggest ones are sort of football pitches. So the largest ones at the moment are sort of 100 megawatts, a couple of gigawatts of power. So you're talking football field size, multi-football field size warehouses full of computers. So they exist at pretty huge scales.
Are they all above ground? Are they underground as well?
They're mostly above ground, I think. There are lots of interesting experiments. So one of the challenges as you move around the world is you have different temperatures outside, and you want to keep the thing cool, right? So just the basic physics of that means if you put them in a cool area in the north, you've got a better temperature differential. So people are playing different experiments. So there was a famous one Microsoft did where they had a data center in a container and they put it in the sea to use the sort of thermal mass of the sea to keep the thing cool. And I think it sort of worked, although it's a bit hard to service the data center because you've got to put a diving suit on.
Take a submarine down there.
Yeah, and generally it's just pragmatic stuff, right? I mean, if you bury the thing, you've got all those challenges of getting... They turn over equipment, right? A computer, if you run it very hard for a very long time, will eventually fail, and you have to replace it with new equipment.
I hadn't thought of that. But
and you've got to get the kit in and get the kit out, right? So the more you bury it inside a clever place, if you imagine the bond layer, with the waterfall going over the top and in the side of the mountain, then that's going to be a pain, isn't it? You can't drive your truck of kit up. And, thousands and thousands of processing elements in a big data center. This is, there's a bit of a logistics side to it. You've just got to get the kit there and keep it running.
I'm now imagining having to take an army of ninjas with you just to change a light bulb.
Yes,
it's better and better.
Yeah.
I wonder if Meta have their own ninjas.
Dear listeners, can you tell us the end of a recording day?
This is your fourth today? Is that what you said? There you go.
Yeah, there you
the
go.
leaders of some of the tech companies around the world, I fully imagine, do have armies of ninjas.
Oh, that could well be the case.
I would put nothing past them.
Yeah. No. Don't say any more. You don't.
No.
So, do we know how many data centers there are in the world?
I am trying to find out the answer to that question. It's surprisingly hard to find the answer to that question. The European Union has got an energy efficiency directive where they're asking their data centers to declare how much energy they're using, because these sort of questions about where does your energy come from and where does your water come from and things like this are sensitive questions. And also, things like what is your sovereign capacity, or do we're now investing data centers in the UK, aren't we, for doing AI. there are these questions about how many there are, but actually there doesn't seem to be much of a database. The data that's released is in very aggregate form, probably to sort of protect the commercial sensitivity, and there are businesses who specialise in trying to find out the answer to that question and then selling you the data, right? So they're often behind paywalls. So actually, I haven't yet found a public source for this. The IEA do have a figure for how much energy they think data centers are using globally. The last estimate they had was a sort of 460 terawatt hours, but predicting could be as much as 1,000 terawatt hours by 2026, actually, which is not too far away.
Can you give us a comparison to the scale of that? What is 460 terawatt hours? How much energy would that be for a country or something like that?
That would be more than Italy. That would be more than many countries. But that's obviously data centers running globally. But the footprint of that is considerable. And one of the interesting things is how fast it's growing, because people are making these very major investments in more data centers. And it's not that people aren't aware that this requires a lot of energy. But the interesting, you can build data centers faster than you can build out the energy grid to service it. So there's this interesting question about how much of our energy would we like to put to this purpose? I think is a really interesting question.
Yeah, I think we're a bit past the stage where all your data's stored on a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk.
I found my floppy disk the other day. It reminded me of a much more parsimonious era where all my files were.
Yes, all your files on a 3-inch bit of plastic. Yeah.
Now I wonder if I can ever find a piece of equipment to read it. Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this growth and this demand for data, it won't only be AI, it'll be for other things as well. Do we have a sense of the extent to which this rapid development and championing of AI as a business sector and as an investable sector and all of those sorts of things, is that accelerating this process in a particular way? And do we even know if that's the case?
I think we do know that the energy demand globally is starting to rise again. And that seems to coincide with the rise of AI. And it's a particular type of AI, right? So you always need data for training your models. And if you've got a lot of data, you can train bigger models. And the sort of computational load of that is very considerable. So ChatGPT-4, 1.8 trillion model parameters. I'm sure this is out of date. But if you imagine you've got to sort of tune this model and train this model, it takes them, they get 25,000 graphics cards, train it for 100 days at a cost of about $100 million.
Oh, heavens.
Just in energy costs. Right? I don't know. Actually, I don't know if this was from a talk that I watched. I don't know if that includes the cost of buying all that infrastructure. I don't imagine so. I think they rent the GPUs and do it that way. That's 54 gigawatt hours to train that. And of course, you don't train it once. You train it again and again, and everyone else is trying to train their own models. So that demand is very considerable. But actually, the sort of a lot of focus is on the expense of that. The inference cost when I ask a query is actually quite small for one query. The question is, what's the scale of queries, the number of queries you do, and does that add up? And when you look at, say, Google's energy footprint, you find that there's sort of 60% inference cost and 40% training cost. So actually, just even though those queries aren't super expensive compared to some of the other things we do in life, it's just the sheer scale of running those models with millions and billions of users that adds up.
And this is where maybe I'm going to try not to rant.
No, you don't stop on my account.
Remember all the bad things he said about the SDGs. Go on.
Yeah, go on. I can't believe you remember that.
Oh, you remember everything.
Yeah, encyclopedic.
But if AI searches are supplied as a matter of course and you can't turn them off, then actually it induces its own. Because I don't want that inference cost because I'm not interested in what the inference is going to tell me. So in that respect, that automation of AI that's being stuck on with everything that you seem to access these days must in itself then actually perpetuate this energy use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these. So when people ask me, well, what can people do? It's when they make those kind of business decisions to embed the thing, and then you're doing it for every search for every person times the scale of the number of users of that thing. You build Copilot into Windows 11, you build that into your search. I noticed the other day Meta have embedded AI into my WhatsApp.
Which is the least.
Which is
why would I need it?
Well, I don't have that many friends. I don't need AI to tell me what my friends have said. Right? I don't get that many messages. I'm not very popular. But the point is that it's very hard to turn it off. And they're all sort of seeking, what's the new business model? How am I going to use AI to do well here? Microsoft's famous Bing AI that started going more and more over to the right. They're all sort of trying to find a way to use this, but I think we're losing the ability to turn it off.
Yeah.
And that's all, and people think we need it, so they're building more and more infrastructure for it. But actually, the interesting question about the WhatsApp thing is, does that mean that AI is now reading all my private messages to be able to offer some value to me? I don't know about you. I thought those were private messages. I don't particularly want that. And the same with the big investment in the UK. I do not want my health records, going in a format that, to some US company, et cetera, et cetera. There's some big questions for us as a society about how we get the data to the AI, where the AI is, what control we have over that. And I think that's very interesting.
It drives me insane, just like with Google, because Google in itself is a form of very early evolution AI, because it was searching for you and finding the information you wanted. Now it's providing you with these almost entirely useless summaries at the tops of pages.
I'm going to just briefly defend AI for a second, right?
Don't do it. You'll get kicked out.
Oh, okay. I was listening this morning on the radio, and they were saying about this sort of Welsh language model, right? I would never. I'm sorry, Welsh people. I think we have one in the room. I haven't learnt Welsh, so this technology would maybe help me translate some stuff. But we have to question. AI doesn't think. There is no I in the AI, right? It's not intelligent. It's producing language which is statistically plausibly like the language we use. You have to question how right it is. But I think there are many use cases, as Jan said earlier, right? There are training deep learning models on lots of images of cancers and using that to scan for cancer. There are the sort of announcements around new drug discoveries by entirely AI-driven virtual lab. There are definitely use cases for AI. The problem I have with that is used as the lever to justify all the ridiculously bad uses of AI for micro-targeting messages, increased cybersecurity risks through phishing scams that are getting more and more convincing because of the power of AI. There's lots of ways in which AI is accelerating things. But I don't want to just... I'm always very negative. I don't want to just say AI has no use.
No,
it's the blanket default embedding of AI in everything that I'd love to challenge.
Yeah, I've lost count of the amount of times that on any social media platform you get asked, would you like AI to write this message for you? Or would you like AI to edit this message for you? And if you're doing that, you're no longer a person. You are just an automated bot almost, because AI is doing the talking for you. It's not your voice, it's AI's. But yeah, I do understand there are uses for AI that are probably really important. You never see them in everyday life.
And I suppose that's the thing with all sorts of new technology and many of the sustainability issues that we talk about. And so thinking about modern slavery, employment brokers are really great to match workers to jobs, but it can go wrong. And I suppose we're in that kind of thing. So if we focus on then what's at stake with data centers and sustainability. So you said earlier that data centers were growing faster than the capacity of the energy system to generate energy sources for them, and in particular renewable energy sources. Why are data centers after renewable energy, and are they hoovering up or about to hoover up the renewable energy capacity in the countries in which they operate?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So demand for energy is growing globally, and renewables are probably the most cost-effective way of delivering energy, where you do need to decarbonise everything from transport to heating to the energy that feeds data centers. But the problem with having a growing demand for energy is twofold. You're creating more that you have to decarbonise. You're going to have to build those solar panels and wind turbines and hydro plants, which has a footprint in energy and material terms in itself. And these are very rich companies. These are trillion-dollar companies in many cases who have more money than many countries, who can afford to buy all the green energy in a particular region, to the exclusion of maybe other things. So there's this sort of example I like to use in one of my talks of a bread factory in Sweden who couldn't buy the capacity they needed because it had already been reserved for data center use. So if your grid is of a certain size, and let's take the UK as an example, a lot of the good wind power is in the north, very controversial topic, especially for the Scots, and a lot of the use for it is in the south, and you've got to get the power from one end of the country to the other. Where are you going to put your data centres? You quite often put them near the population centres for reasons I was talking about, latency and so on, but various other reasons as well. There's a bit of a water shortage in the south. We've had a hosepipe ban for a year. It's getting drier and drier, global warming. So you've then got competing demands of, already there were water shortages due to the sort of growing population in the south of the country. You've got sort of energy and water challenges to meet there. And I would. Do I want more AI for? I'm going to try and trigger more AI for advertising and generating synthetic Lego pictures, or would I like my drinking water? I mean, this is sort of where we're at, isn't it?
What about something like rare earth metals? Are they being used a lot here as well? I know that we're on an area that's not exactly your specialty, Adrian, but is that something as well that they're hoovering up to use in the manufacture of everything that's in there?
Yeah, so I know people are studying this. I've not looked into it more than reading their papers, but there is growing demand for rare earths at something like 10% a year. It's at a rate exceeding the growth of other material resources. So that also has an environmental impact, because to get they're called rare earths for a reason, right? You've got to dig up a lot of earth and spend a lot of energy and materials processing those to get you need really pure materials in things like chip fabrication. And one of the other things that it's driving is if you need to train AI, you want bigger and bigger and faster graphics cards or AI accelerator cards. So these are the cutting edge in terms of the sort of integration of processing units. So you need big fabrication plants like TMC are building. Well, everyone's trying to build fabrication plants for the latest generation of integrated circuits. So the more we push for AI, the more demand for computation there is. The more computation there is, the more you need these very specialist processors. You need fabrication plants for that. Once you've got those things, you need to get your money back. So you're going to run those things for decades producing chips at that process level, but you're going to keep pushing for the next generation. And there are roadmaps for more processors. And I suppose the thing that I hadn't realized until relatively recently is, as you try and squeeze the performance, you get the transistors so close together, there are kind of quantum effects. You need to, they've got roadmaps looking at really clever architectures to kind of minimize that. But one of the other things they're doing is exploring all the other mixes of rare earths they can find to get those gains, to keep pushing that to the next level of integration. So the demands for what was on a processor in the 1980s in terms of materials, it was a much simpler process with much less rare elements to it than the chips we're making today, which use just about anything that isn't radioactive.
Is there any kind of planned obsolescence when it comes to these data centres with the ones that are going offline, and what happens to everything that's there, all the infrastructure, all the materials, anything like that?
Ooh. So I don't know. I think it's not really a question of planned obsolescence, other than they know very well how long a computer will last in that environment when you work it pretty hard. And they have regular cycles of updating the hardware because you're going to have to. There's probably is a question there at what point you do that, whether the thing's exhausted. You probably don't wait for the failure. You probably just replace them earlier than that. And I don't know what you do with 25,000 A100 graphics cards.
Presumably, circular economy solutions might come into play.
You'd like to think so.
To retake those materials back out and reuse them in some way.
So I think I imagine so. So the high performance computing community has quite a good pipeline where the top end passed down to the next generation and things get reused. I could do with knowing more about this. All I know is that the sort of the Global E-Waste Initiative thinks that 22% of e-waste goes through official channels and the rest gets recycled illegally in really kind of not very good ways for people and the planet. So yeah, I mean, if those things aren't completely broken, I think they could be reused, and they're a pretty high end hardware that will be a big upgrade for some other parts of the industry. So
Yeah.
I imagine it's a pipeline that moves down.
I was thinking you can't necessarily give the energy back and you can't give the water back, but the least you could do would be to give back the materials that you've used that are no longer using.
Well, now as soon as you say that, it pops into.
You found a way for them to give the energy back and the water back.
I wonder about giving the energy back. So we're using water to cool heat, but in some parts of our system, we would love some heat going into a district plan in order to be able to warm people's houses. So could data centres, excess heat, end up in district heating plants for people, or is that like mad complicated?
Well,
This sounds like something else from a Bond film.
It sounds more socially just than a Bond film.
You got my feeble brain now. Someone was telling me about a project they'd done on where people will accept heat from.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
I'm going to have to come back to that one. Yes. So this is actually common practice, right? So the famous example was the data center that feeds the local swimming pool. You need to keep the swimming pool hot. You've got the waste heat. Don't vent it to the air. Heat up the swimming pool. And we had a PhD student who was looking at can use it to dry logs or power greenhouses and various sort of different virtuous uses of the waste heat, which there are some. And in the Netherlands, it's pretty common that you won't get planning for your data center unless you feed into the district heat network, and that's more common because it's more common to build district heat networks and housing that feeds from district heat networks. Whereas in the UK, this is something we've not done very much. We've done a little bit more recently, and some of the more recent housing projects are doing district heat networks. I mean, I would generally say district heat networks are a good thing rather than having a boiler in every house. You use waste heat from all sorts of things and help share that. I was chatting to someone from Belgium who was saying they were really struggling sometimes to match up the business case and also the use model. So they were trying to get waste heat from a factory, in this case to people's homes, and the factory was producing heat 24/7, and the homes only really needed it during the winter and during the day. So there was a sort of mismatch that people wouldn't really want to pay for the energy that way. And the same with data centres to some extent. They're going to run year round, and our use of heat isn't always year round. So, but I think generally, if you're going to have waste heat, sure. The other interesting question is, do you want to live next to a football pitch sized, light bedecked data centre with some diesel backup generators when you build your housing? So it's not very good heat. It's quite low temperature, and that means it cools quite quickly. So you need to be quite close to where you need it, and that's a bit of a rub. But then maybe this comes back to Paul's point that maybe you would have micro data centres around. We're building a house. There's a housing estate down the road from the university right now. Could they have a micro data centre that's feeding in and doing some of the computation? Probably their broadband provider would quite like a small place to put their video content or whatever. Maybe we could be thinking more cleverly about how to marry the two things up.
Or indeed, if you are a James Bond villain, it's the perfect place to house all of your lackeys. You don't care what quality heat they're getting, but you're managing to house them and get that all through the residues.
You're back to the ninjas again.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's all coming together. It's suddenly all making lots of sense.
This episode was always going to go down this route, I think. So a couple of sort of quick fire questions in a way.
Okay.
Is a ChatGTP query do we know how much more energy that uses versus a conventional Google search?
Right. I'm glad you asked that because I looked it up. A colleague of mine at Glasgow, Wim van der Boeid. Apologies for the pronunciation. I can never pronounce his surname. Sorry, Wim. So his analysis was that a Google search is probably something like 0.0004 kilowatt hours, which, just to give you a kind of ballpark, boiling a kettle is probably about zero point 0.1 kilowatt hours, right? But that's probably, I think that's for just a Google search, and then you're talking 0.02 grams of carbon for that. And he thinks that a sort of ChatGPT enabled search is roughly 60 times that. So it's I guess, that's still less than your cup of tea, to put that in perspective. But you can do it again and again. People don't usually ask one query, and it's not so much that one, is it? It's the fact that everybody is now doing that. That is, and I saw stats for ChatGPT 3 that it was something like 7 tons of CO2 a day or something for inferencing that. So I guess ChatGPT 4 is more.
And again, I guess we need to stress this is based upon a text inquiry rather than the can you
That's
create
right.
me the silly superhero figure.
Yeah, so that's another thing. So general models, my understanding is, because they can do a great many things, including generating images, it's not really one model. It's lots of other models that are contributing into that. So if you ask a general model to do a thing, it's going to do a lot. It's a big model trained on these billions and billions, trillions of parameters. It's going to do a lot more work than if you can find a specialist model that is just trained to do the job you want. It's going to be lower cost. So if you took the sort of Bloom multi-language model, that would be much more efficient to train an inference than a general model like ChatGPT. The classic one is writing code. It's very good at writing template bits of code, like bits of websites and calling APIs and stuff like that. If you find one that's just trained on a sort of corpus of code and use that instead of using ChatGPT, it's going to be, quite a lot less expensive.
And we were talking about this in a project I've been working on, looking at biodiversity impacts of solar parks, for example, and talking about building language models, but only training it on like the academic research that is focused on these particular areas. So much smaller data sets and to answer quite particular questions. And I found that very engaging because you could then deal with all the parameters in each one of the studies and look at something synthetic, which I know is something that exercises us about how do you join together knowledge in ways that will be useful. And I was really quite blown away by that because I think, oh, now that's useful. But again, much smaller, not general purpose, and not picking up crazy things as well as uncrazy things, but like a contained training set.
So I think that's getting to the heart of a couple of really good things. One is you can't really trust what comes out if you don't know what went in a way, and the biases that has, and the truthfulness of what went in. And what you're talking about is a model that you pretty much trust everything that went in, so you're very likely to get a much more authoritative answer out of that model. And it's also going to be much smaller. So it's going to be many orders of magnitude smaller in terms of the sort of training space, if you like, so the amount of computation you need to train it and also inference it. So I think that's part of being responsible, I think, is that we should be trying to, use it where it has genuine value and use the sort of most appropriate models and techniques.
So as tech users then, what can we do to reduce the impacts that we have when it comes to our computer use and the use of data centers?
Am I allowed to have a problem with that question?
You are indeed, because you
Yeah.
always...
No. I've got all these problems with AI, which I've been
Okay.
told to drop, and I'm being over dramatic.
So I suppose this is a bit like people say to me, why you're refusing to fly, why the flight's going anyway, It's a bit like that, isn't it? Once you've got the infrastructure in place, then you can do your bit to remove the thing. But what you really want to be doing is removing the demand in the first place, or not building out infrastructure where you don't need in the first place, and asking these questions really early on. Is this the right moral thing to be doing when there's a climate crisis? And we need to decarbonise energy systems, and I think we've got some big things facing us about the future of work, the future of education. AI is very disruptive in good ways and bad ways. Yeah. So, but I mean, there are things, as we've talked about, right? If you're generating movies with AI, that's horrendous. If you're generating images, that's probably not great for the artist whose work is ripped off. And you know, I don't know, do those things in moderation. The less often you do them, the lower impact that will have. There's probably so where you get the energy from and where the computation happens globally does affect how much greenhouse gas emissions there are. Right. So if your data center is in where you've got a high level of renewables, like in the Nordics, then the energy is likely to be greener, so the amount of computation will have lower emissions. I mean, it doesn't change probably the emissions from building those data centers, which is probably done where it's manufactured in largely the Far East. So we can be a bit choosy about where we do things, and that's great for model training because we can do model training where the energy is greener. I mean, you don't have to train it here. I mean, there's an access to data question, data sovereignty issues around that, but and the other thing we can do is you don't have to train the thing quickly, so we could put them near renewable, wind farms, and when you've got excess energy, you could do a bit of training, and you can help to. They're big demands of energy, but they're quite deferrable loads, so we could use that to help us with our energy transition story to some extent. I would say it's not enough to generate to say why that's a justification for them, but we can be doing smarter things there. Yeah, and I mean, as you say, right, we can turn off if we're trying to push back a bit on the demand, we need to sort of push to have options to take it out of some of the things we do every day. And I put in you're absolutely right. You can change your query string on your search engine, and that will mean it's not running as somewhere else in the world. It's not running those AI jobs, hopefully. But I think the most important thing we can do is when we're the ones making the decisions and pushing for the adoption of these technologies, in our work and in our lives, it's those decisions about what we're going to be doing and what we need that are more critical than the ones on a day-to-day basis.
So for this whole field, what's next for you in this area?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in how do we. I mean, it's really hard, right? It's really hard to decide what are the right digital methods to adopt in almost anything. So we've got a project on sort of responsible innovation in science, and we're working with environmental scientists who are looking at questions about, do I run big process models for simulating what's going on the planet, or do I run AI to emulate the big process models? And we're looking at how can you work out what the footprint's going to be, and which is a better choice for and what's that trade-off between the value of the answers you get out of the thing and the environmental damage of the computation that you're doing. So this is a project with CH that we've just got off the ground. So we're about a few months into that.
So it's the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology.
Yes, that's correct.
Just for our listeners. Yeah.
Are you sure, Jan? You didn't sound sure.
Oh, well, because I'm a bit dyslexic, so those two words, so it could be CHE, it could be ECH. I mean, it's just sort of like, it just swirls around in my mind.
ECHR?
That's something different.
Yeah.
Let's not go there today.
Just because I know what CH means, everyone must know what CH means. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So they do a lot of things like looking after what's the water quality in the UK, and they sort of they've got a lot of data science going on, looking at the water use and various other things. Yeah.
Well, that sounds very cool.
Well, I'm sure it's something we'll talk to you about in the future. But until then, Adrian, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great.
It's a pleasure. I can't believe you'll have me back for a third time.
We'll wait and see. I mean, he's promising, I'm promising now.
That's nice. So to be your friend.
He is my friend, that's why I can say it.
Delightful. Thank you very much, Adrian. There's so much, Jan, to take into consideration whenever you're doing anything as simple as a Google search, isn't there?
Much more than I ever thought, but also the whole sort of, I think the life cycle of technological development, how it is, how it might be used, therefore what kind of investment it attracts, and then what it induces in terms of materials and energy flows is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's all the considerations you have to make beyond just the simple, oh, do I really want to know this, or where can I find this? It's crazy. I still come back to the fact that people should stop making silly avatars of themselves.
Well, I'm sort of safe from that because I didn't even know you could, and if I did know you could, I probably couldn't do it myself.
No, you'd get AI to do it for you, and that's the problem.
That's the point. I also was very struck, though, that there's different types of AI and different types of applications and different sizes of applications and what the AI might be trained on and what it might be, what the querying might be doing. So it seems to me that some of the things we might see in the newspapers that are full on or full against AI actually are missing all of that subtlety, and within that subtlety is where really interesting answers and decisions would rest.
Yeah, and of course, it isn't just AI, as we were saying, it's data generally and the demand for data, and then the various different things that you have to think about when it comes to data and the energy demands, the water demands. I was particularly struck by the Swedish bread factory that wasn't able to buy its energy because the data centre down the road had bought up all the energy. So therefore, all the people in that particular part of Sweden weren't getting any bread that week.
Yes, I think they end up having, I read that story, I think they had to end up manufacturing further away, in which case you then have to ship the bread to where they might have been otherwise. Yeah, so which comes first, bread or bites?
Yeah, that's it. People need to consider, do they want their daily bread or do they want their daily dose of silly avatars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madness.
It
but
is.
I was very struck, and I'm not saying this just because our producer is a Welsh language speaker, but maybe I am, just to keep on the right side, but also the extent to which these kind of applications can really build capacity in a language, support people to learn it, all of those sorts of things as well.
Would it be the worst thing in the world if the Welsh language became extinct?
Yes.
Dear listeners, you may have heard a very resounding yes in the background, and just Mr. Turner is going to pay for that comment later on. He's going to be edited in the most mean and horrible way from now into eternity.
The spellings alone and the sounds that come out of a Welsh person's mouth. Yeah, but I do take your point, though. There are things that AI can do, and Adrian was stressing this, whether it be Welsh language or whether it be cancer diagnosis. I'll leave it to yourself to decide which of those might be the most important. There are obvious, practicable, really important impacts for it. And there's reasons why we use AI, and there's reasons why we use data, and therefore reasons why data banks and data centres are needed.
Yeah. And I was really struck, the example was given that the Netherlands does quite a bit of integrated planning for the data centres and other needs. I don't perceive that that's the case across the board. So that's kind of impressive that a country would seek a multifunctionality with what they're trying to do.
It strikes me they're almost planning for, say, the next generation, which is convenient because next week we're going to be talking about generational governance.
That was a smooth move.
Thank you. I'm good. We're going to be bringing back Nick Barter, another return guest, Professor Nick Barter from Griffith University in Australia, talking to us about next generation, generational governance, how that tied in with his previous work on Future Normal. So that'll be great too.
I'm looking forward to it.
Until then, thank you very much for listening. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jan Babington.